All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Better Business Bureau serving the Northwest. My name is David Quinlan, and I am the Vice President of Marketing at BBB and W. And today, we're super excited and honored to have national best-selling author and veteran business coach David Allen with us as he breaks down his world-renowned methodology of stress-free performance. You probably have heard of it, Getting Things Done, or GTD. We're going to have a Q&A section at the end with David, so please feel free to ask any questions at that time. This webinar will be recorded, so you can refer to it later if you want to pick up on some of the techniques that David talks about during this presentation. With that being said, David, thank you so much for being here and giving this presentation, and the presentation is all yours.
Thanks, David. Obviously, with a name like David, you have high sensitivity, quality standards, and are a cool guy. Delighted to be here, and thanks for the invitation. I always like the opportunity to talk to people about this methodology that basically I've spent the last half of my 71 years really uncovering, discovering, refining, implementing with, now hundreds of thousands of people with this stuff. And so I'm going to share first of all, I'm going to give you the high level why. Why is this? What is this? And why might this be important these days as a methodology or a series of best practices that I've uncovered? And then some highlights about what are these best practices, and give you some tips and tricks that you can walk away immediately. And not so much new things, but remind yourself and maybe, inspire yourself to be doing some of the things you already do to some degree, but to a much greater degree. Makes a huge difference there. So I spent the last, again, 35 years really kind of uncovering what it is that makes the difference between a good day and a bad day, because we've all had both. And so, I just said, well, wait a minute. When we have a good day, when things are really working, when things are really cooking, we're really on, we're in our zone, and we're essentially being productive, whether that's cooking spaghetti or just, or writing a business plan or doing whatever you're doing. But you're feeling like that's the right thing to do and I'm in the right place at the right time. What is it that you're doing there that gets you into that zone? Because a lot of people get into that zone, but then they fall out of it, don't know how they got into it to begin with, so they don't know how to recreate it if they wanted to. So I'm going to give you the keys for that very quickly. And again, as David said, we'll do a Q&A session at the end of this. So if you wind up with questions, or if you come up with a question as I'm talking, please make a note about that. And we'll try to address that as best we can at the end of this. So how are things in your head office? By the way, where is your head office? And people say, well, I don't have a head office, or my head office is over there. Come on, 99.9% of the world, here's where most people's head office is, right there. And quite frankly, it's a crappy office. If you're trying to use your head to remember, to remind, to prioritize, to create appropriate relationships between all the things that we're committed to do and all the things we're trying to manage and handle, it ain't the best approach, folks. Your brain did not evolve to remember or remind. It evolved to do very, very sophisticated stuff to survive on the savannah and the jungle or whatever. So your brain is really, really good at looking around in your environment, recognizing, patterns of things you're familiar with, and that's a snake, and that's a thunderstorm, and those are berries over there I can eat, and whatever. But it does that brilliantly, and computers can barely even come close. And yet you go to the store to get lemons, and you come back with 6 things and no lemons. What happened? Well, you tried to trust your brain was going to actually do that very well. It doesn't do that very well at all. As a matter of fact, the new cognitive science research has basically come up with the number of things you can actually handle just in your head. If your head's the only place you're tracking these things, if you just got it in your mind, I need cat food, I need to write a business plan, I need to hire a new vice president, I need to talk to my sister about whatever. And if your head's the only place that has those, guess how many things you can handle there without losing perspective on all of them. That's it, guys. 4 things. Oh, there's a fire over there, the thunderstorm's coming, my baby's crying, I need to sew this. That's about it. You add anything else to that and you will be driven off latest and loudest. So a whole lot of the master key to stress-free productivity is to build the external brain and to populate it appropriately. What the cognitive scientists are now calling the external brain is basically, it's just what you, I imagine most of you listening to this have a calendar. Why? Because somehow you don't trust your brain to keep remembering where you need to be at 3 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon. Well, that's a portion of an external brain. In other words, you're building a support structure external to your mind that then lets your mind relax itself from trying to remember or remind. It can look at your calendar and decide, hey, that's a good thing to do, or that's where I need to be when. So your intuition and your intelligence, can make good decisions off of what's in front of you, but it can't keep track of what ought to be in front of you. It doesn't do that very well. So that said, here's the thing. The world is not showing up in a pretty simple package. It's showing up in a way that your mind, can get totally confused and troubled about all that, unless you catch this principle that your mind is for having ideas, but not for holding on to them. And that's something I discovered 35 years ago in a lot of my work with professionals, entrepreneurs, startup businesses, et cetera, with folks that if we could get them to stop doing this and starting to build external brains, they could be much smarter, have a lot less stress, and make better decisions on an ongoing basis. And again, the problem is your world is not showing up in a pretty pink package. It's showing up like this. So come on, guys. It's morning for you. I'm in Amsterdam. It's evening for me. But no matter what, any of us, as soon as we stop listening to this, you're going to run into this. The fire hose of reality is coming at you, but in no particular, no preconceived, no pre-organized format. It's showing up like this. I mean, come on. Any 15-minute period today, guys, what are you having to deal with? Your printer just broke, or you ran out of ink, or you just got an email from an angry client. You have to then deal with something about that, and your boss walked in, or your partner walked in and gave you dumped this thing on you. You go, oh my God, where did that come from? And what am I going to do about that? And then you've got a text from your mom. That's in 10 minutes. Give yourself 10 hours of that. And at the end of the day, are you going, yo, dude, bring it on? Are you going, yeah, I'm toast. I need a drink. So there is actually a way to thread through all this. There's a way to surf on top of it, but it's not free. You actually have to move into a state of mind, and you have to do the things you need to do so you can surf on top. I steal an image from the martial arts that I had a lot of experience years ago in this. Mind like water. They use that image mostly because it refers to not over or under reacting. Water just totally responds to its environment appropriately. It's not stressed out. It just deals with whatever its environment is. And it's always, seeking back to calm and balance again, in what it's doing. But if you're taking one meeting in your mind to the next, and you're taking home to work in your mind, or work to home in your mind, that's not mind like water. You are being distracted. You're not totally optimal in terms of your ability to focus on things appropriately and most productively. So this is the state to get into, where your mind is relaxed, you're totally present. And the big key to getting things done is not so much about getting things done. There's a lot about that, but it's mostly about being appropriately engaged with your environment so you can be totally present with whatever you're doing, minute to minute.
David, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. We're getting a couple people raising their hands about an audio issue. So if you are having a hard time hearing, please let us know on the chat icon, and we'll work on correcting that. Go ahead.
Cool.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. No, that's mind like water. You got to handle what's got your attention. Hey, so good for those folks. Hey, wait a minute, something's distracted me. Something's got my attention about this. What do I do to resolve it? So that's a lot of what this issue is about. It's all the way, wait a minute, what's got your attention? What do you need to do about that to get this back onto cruise control, if you will? So the whole idea of mind like water is that's the best state to hit a golf ball from, or fire somebody from, or cook spaghetti from, or tuck your kids into bed from. So, but the problem is most people would say, well, gee, David, if I had more time, I could get my life under control. I could get back to that place. But frankly, you don't need time. Leonardo da Vinci had 24 hours. Mother Teresa had 24 hours. Johann Sebastian Bach had 24 hours. He didn't have social media or email, but he had 20 kids. I mean, take your pick. Still got a lot of stuff done. But it's not really so much about that there is more time needed. It's what you really need is room. You need the space inside your head to be able to think. I mean, come on, folks. How much time does it take to have a good idea? 0. How much time does it take to be present or loving with your kids? 0. How much time does it take to be innovative or none? Those do not require time. They do require something, though. What they require is room in your head. If you're distracted, if you're annoyed, if you're worried, if you've got your brain wrapped around something, it's very difficult to have a creative new thought. It's very difficult to just be present with whatever's presenting itself to you in terms of your kids, their soccer game, or the food you're trying to cook tonight. So space is really what you need. And so, but how do you create space? And by the way, what would you do with space? I've had thousands and thousands of people now implement this methodology that I came up with. And what they do with the space that it creates is quite unique to them. Invariably, it does create space, but some people use it to just be more creative. Some of my biggest champions are people, and I can say their names because they publicly said it. Robert Downey Jr. gives my book to his friends. So does Will Smith. Howard Stern, whatever you think about Howard, has told 5 million people on Sirius Radio that GTD and this stuff changed his life. So these are highly creative people. Of course, they're also managing very, businesses, in their life. But to give them the room and space to still be in that creative space and not be distracted by all the other things that they get wrapped around, big issue. And some people use the space just to be able to think more from a higher altitude on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis. So they're seeing more of the forest to manage instead of the trees to hug. We all get down in the weeds, but that's a lot of what more room would give most people, especially those of you running your own businesses or being in your own businesses and being in that game. Come on, guys, you need to constantly be able to step back and see things from a higher perspective, because it's so easy to get wrapped around the axle in terms of your businesses. And, most people just, once they experience this, they go, wow, I could actually watch my girls play soccer without being on my iPhone. I can't tell you the legion of testimonials I've had of people that said, wow, that changed my life. That was so way cool to be able to do that and not feel uncomfortable in that way. And it's really about managing the flow of life's work. It's about getting in touch with that art or that craft, about how do you manage the flow of things coming at us, and work in the very broad sense called anything you want to get done that's not done yet. So it includes all the personal, all the little, all the big stuff, any of that stuff that's on your mind, would, could, should, need tos, ought tos, might want to, and all that stuff. And you're all probably using techniques of this already. Come on, have you ever taken work home that you had to bring back to work the next day? I mean, your job would be on the line if you forgot it. This is critical stuff you took home that night to edit, to review it or whatever, but you had to bring it back to the board meeting or to the meeting the next day. Don't forget it. Where did you put it the night before? What strategy did you employ to make sure that you could really make sure that you weren't going to forget it in the morning? And have you ever put anything in front of the door? Yeah. I mean, for this, you got a college degree. Give me a break. How sophisticated is that? Actually, it is very sophisticated. The night before, some part of you was smart enough to realize that what might go through the door in the morning may barely be conscious. Duh, what's this? Oh yeah, I got to take it with me. Thank you very much. So in a way, when you were smart, you did a smart thing and you parked a smart result in a smart place, so that when you weren't so smart, by the way, which is most of the time, you'd actually did a smart thing. So in a strange way, a whole lot of this methodology I uncovered was, how do you make sure you make good, intelligent decisions, park the results in appropriate places, so you don't have to continually be that smart to actually do smart stuff. And that's a master key. Let me give you the 2-minute version of what this is I came up with in the last 35 years. So hang on. First of all, any potentially meaningful thing, And potentially meaningful, you don't know how meaningful it is. You just thought, hey, do I need cat food? You write down cat food. Gee, I might need to call my sister. It's her birthday or whatever. That you capture any potentially meaningful thing in some trusted bucket. You clarify sooner than later what you're going to do about them. You're going to call your sister. You're going to buy cat food. What are you doing about this? Exactly. You organize the results in some sort of functional categories, which you reflect on consistently. I mean, like, okay, I got to call my sister. I put that somewhere that when I have a phone and time, I'll see that. I need cat food. I'll stick that post it on the refrigerator. So whoever goes to the store next gets it. In a sense, that's simple. But then you need to, when you go to the store, you better grab the Post-it. You need to take a look. When you're in the store, you need to pull out the list. Go, okay, did I get it? And then you need to keep an overview of all those commitments at all levels in order to make trusted choices about what you do. So in a sense, that's the whole game. Now, people say, well, okay, but what techniques can I do to make sure that I do that more consistently and more completely? Well, let me give you the 5 steps. And these are the 5 steps that we've uncovered over lots of years here, and discovering that we actually do all of these. I didn't make this up. I just recognize them. But each one of these steps has its own best and worst practices and its own tools and techniques. So let me give you the overview of what these 5 steps are. First of all, you need to grab what's got your attention. That's number 1. You then need to decide, look, is that something I need to do something about or not? Yes or no. And there's some things to deal with once you decide those decisions. Then you need to organize the results of that. Is this reference material? Is this trash? Is this something I need to be reminded to make a phone call about? Whatever. Put that stuff where it belongs. And then you need to step back and be able to review and reflect on your external brain's contents. So you're making sure you're not missing anything. And then step 5, you then engage your attention and your activities based upon a trusted choice, given all your options, as opposed to, gee, I hope this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and you're driven by latest and loudest. So that's in a sense, the whole game. Now I'll unpack each one of these in a little bit of detail here and give you some, best practices about how to do that. If you were to hire me as a coach, or any of the folks around the world that are now coaching this methodology, the first thing we're going to do is just walk in and say, well, wait a minute, what's got your attention? What's on your mind right now? I imagine most of you who have been listening to this have had your mind wander off into some place that has nothing to do with what I've been talking about while you've been listening to me. And that's where we would go to try to grab, well, wait a minute, why did that grab your attention? Something's not on cruise control. Something's not on autopilot. Something is yanking your chain. By the way, all you have to do is look around your physical environment right now and ask yourself, what doesn't belong there permanently? You got any stacks of stuff? You got any piles? Got any paper? Got any things sitting around, that don't belong there permanently, that you need to decide, do something about? Yeah. Well, that's the first thing to grab. It's like, wait a minute, what's got your attention there? And then we would just start to, grab that. By the way, if any of you have a pen and paper right now, right in front of you, let me challenge you to take the next 60 seconds and do something that we call a mind sweep. Literally, just grab your pen, grab a piece of paper, anything, anywhere, and just start jotting down what's popped into your mind. You need to handle, deal with, take care of something that's, God, I need cat food. I need to hire a VP. I need to talk to my partner about X, Y, and Z. I need to look into whether we need a new cell phone service or not. Oh my God, By the way, guess how long that usually takes? When we sit and coach people, mid to senior level professionals anyway, guess how long it takes to just identify what's got their attention? I'm not talking about prioritize or organize or do anything about it. I'm just talking about identify it. Most people have no idea how many things they've actually committed to internally in terms of their internal psyche. Usually it takes, by the way, 1 to 6 hours for most people to actually complete that list. So, you don't have time here now, but I would highly recommend that as soon as you get off of this podcast or this webinar, as soon as you have a little bit of a window, you take that pen and a piece of paper and absolutely empty your head. Now, many of you have made lists before, but I'm talking about a complete one. You know, what you don't want to try to do is prioritize or organize or anything. Just grab it, get it out of your head. You know, key thing there. Now, if you buy into this as a technique, as step one, then obviously you need tools for capturing these things and tools you trust. Now, tools can show up in a low-tech way. You'll see paper-based stuff. Most of my capture stuff is in paper and pen, simply because I don't need batteries or Wi-Fi or any of that, and I don't need to turn anything on to grab an idea while I'm on the run out there. I'm on a tram in Amsterdam, and I suddenly think, oh, yeah, here's something I might want to talk about with a friend of mine, or something to add into an article I'm writing. And I just grab I carry with me a little tiny pocket notebook with a pen, and I just write it down then. And then those notes go into my physical in tray down on the bottom right. I mean, if you don't have one, guys, come on. You're not through with paper yet. It's going to be another 10 years before you're really done. So you still need receipts, and you still need things that showed up in the mail that you need to handle. You're still getting, all that stuff. So the low-tech way is probably the most efficient and effective way to capture all those things that pop into your head and get them out of your head. But then, of course, you need to get those things empty. And by the way, the digital world, and the top part of that is, there are lots of ways you can capture stuff there. The problem is it's a bit of a black hole, because there's so many places you could put stuff in the digital, and once you stick it in there, it's likely to not stick and come back and be evident to you. So does this go into Evernote? Does it go into my task on my Apple phone, or does this go? Oh my God! And so a lot of people have a real problem with that, unless you have the real discipline of this methodology that's going to get these, capture buckets emptied every 24 to 48 hours. So you need to have the capture buckets, but then you also need to get them empty. And that takes us to step two. Step two just says, okay, I now need to take the stuff all the notes I wrote, and then I need to make some decisions about it. I need to process, what does that mean? And, what's its meaning? What does it mean? Well, if any of you looked at any of your emails right now sitting in your in basket in your computer, or any of you looked, frankly, at any of your items on your to-do list, I'm going to challenge you to walk yourself through this simple but very profound thought process. The first thing you need to ask yourself is, excuse me, what is that thing that I just got in the mail? As a matter of fact, I just got something that's a notice of a friend's just birth of their first baby, right? So what is that? Is there some action I need to take about that? So I decided no, just not going to do that. But I did hand it off to my wife, and she may decide to do something about it. I don't know, but I decided no. And that's the first thing you need to really clarify. And as simple as this is, most of you probably still have a bunch of stuff sitting around in your in trays, on your desk, in your emails right now that you have not decided, is this something I'm actually committed to do something about or not? Now, we all get a lot of stuff that there's no action to take. You get a lot of trash, stuff you shouldn't have gotten to begin with, or now you've seen it, you can get rid of it. We get a lot of stuff, certainly in the digital world, that you just need to file as reference. I need to keep track of that email in case I'm ever asked about it, or I need to refer back to the data that's in it. And then you have some things that show up out there that say, no action now, but it's a notice of a training program in my company that's showing up in 3 weeks, but I got a bunch of pending stuff. I don't know, I can't commit to it right now, but let me remind myself at least a week ahead of that event and see if I still want to go to it. So that's the incubate, that's the on hold category. Now, most of the things that people have on their mind tend to be actionable, and then you need to answer a very profound question, which is, wait a minute, what's the very next step I need to take about this? And most of you, if you looked at your to-do list, you frankly would not see the next action on the stuff that you need to take about what's on your to-do list. That's still a decision you need to make. Maybe you might have some, call your sister, wish her happy birthday or whatever. But for the most part, that's a decision that most people still have not made. Once you make that decision, what's the very next thing to do? Is that an email to send? Is that a phone call to make? Is that is that just to park this somewhere? What's the next thing I need to do? Then you have three options. One option is just to do the action right then. hey, let me go just respond to that. It's going to take less than 2 minutes. It would take me longer to organize it and remind myself about it than to finish it right now. So the 2 minute rule is really golden. It's going to save you an extra 2 months to your life or 6 months to your life if you actually implement that, if you haven't done it already. If you just walked around your apartment or your house, by the way, where you live right now, and held to the 2 minute rule, what's the next step on that light bulb that's out? How long would that take? What's the next step on the batteries you need in that thing? And you got the batteries. Come on, how long would it take you to go change them? You'd be amazed how much cleaner and neater your living space is going to be if you just held to the 2 minute rule of things that you notice that need changing and doing around there. Now, if you can't do it in 2 minutes, then you need to ask yourself, are you the right person to do it? And if not, hand it off. That's the delegate. Come on, there's somebody else that can do this better than you, in which case you hand that off. And if it's neither of those, longer than 2 minutes, you can't hand it off, you got to do the action, then that's what you then defer into your inventory of just the number of things that you need to do when you have time to do them. So that's the thinking process. Most people avoid like the plague until the last minute, or until they absolutely have to clean up because they're out of control. So these are the kind of decisions you should make right on the front end, as opposed to the back end of your stuff. One other decision you need to make is if your decision about the next action, once you make that decision about what the action is, will that one action complete whatever your commitment about this is? And if not, you have a project. So project. Oh, I need to call my sister about X, Y, and Z, but that's not going to fish, and I need to, there's a bigger thing we need to accomplish or handle. Next action, I need to take my watch to get it repaired. But the project is to get the watch repaired, but I've got something, there's more than one step until it's finished. So projects can be, in our broad definition, anything from get your watch repaired to hire a vice president, or anything in between. Most of you have between 30 and 100 of those projects, given that broad definition. So defining what those things are is something most people have not done. It does not show up automatically. You actually have to exercise a cognitive muscle, if you will, to make that decision. See, most people's to-do lists look like this. Mom. Well, great. You had one, probably good historical data. Why did you write it on the, oh, her birthday's coming. Well, what are you going to do about her birthday? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, right. Well, the problem is that when you write stuff down like that, yeah, it was a good capture function, but you still haven't clarified what exactly does this mean and what you're going to do about it. Bank. Yes, there are some. Great. Oh, yeah, I need to research maybe credit line extension. Great. So there's decisions still need to be made about this. The problem is if you haven't made the decisions discreetly about the next action or the outcome of these things, then some part of you looks at these and still reminds yourself you're overwhelmed because there's decisions and thinking you haven't finished yet. So in a way, sometimes these lists create more stress than they relieve, simply because there's still clarity that's not handled yet. Now, if you actually made the decisions like I mentioned before, where you wrote down mom, oh, I'm going to now give mom a birthday party. Hey, now you got a goal. Next action, I need to call my sister and see what she thinks about mom's birthday. Project, launch the ad campaign. Yay, got a goal. Email, I need to email Jim and set up whatever. And as simple as that thinking is, and as simple as this looks, most of you have a whole lot of in your life, I'm sorry, I'm going to be bold here, that you have not actually made those discrete decisions yet. And once you make those decisions, which is more attractive to look at, that list on the left or the list on the right? Yeah, there's no neutral territory by me. Anything on your list is either attracting or repulsing you psychologically. And by the way, if any of you like any kind of a ball game, like football, basketball, soccer, or whatever, what do you think the two things are for those players once they're on the field, once they're on the playing field? Two things. Where's the goal? What's the next play? Where's the goal? Where's the next play? And they may have strategy, of course, but the next play could define the next play, could define the next play. So look at the right, and what you see is the goal, and you see the next play. Do you have that about those things that are on your mind? What will be true so you can mark something off as done? that's on your mind. It could be about a client. It could be about a situation. It could be about a problem. It could be about an opportunity. What are those things? What's the goal? What's the next play? So there's a challenge to you is once you've dumped all this stuff out of your mind, then make these decisions about what the next play is. And, and where you get to mark it off as done when what's true. So clarifying your mind sweep is the next step. For most of the people that we coach, it takes 1 to 6 hours just to identify the raw data of stuff they need to think about. And then it takes the next of usually a day and a half or 2 days to go through each one of them one at a time and make that next action and outcome decision. What is it? What are you going to do about it? Whatever. So now, even if you've captured everything and made those decisions, if you don't then put some reminder to call your sister or some reminder to send an email or whatever in some appropriate place, it's still going to crawl back up in your head and create a jammed system. So then the step 3 is then put it where it belongs. In other words, you need to put stuff where they go. And you don't need a very sophisticated system. You don't need a very complex system. It's pretty sophisticated, but you don't need a very complex system. All the actionable things in your life, first of all, if there's more than one step involved, you should have a project list. So project list is absolutely critical for you to have to stay sane and on top of your world. And then the actions you need to take are either calendared actions or they're just actions to do around your calendar. So those are the 2 flavors of actions you need to do. And then you need to keep track of everything you're waiting for. What are all the actions and projects other people are doing you're dependent on, you're waiting on to come back from, or whatever. So it doesn't have to be a very complex system. Now, the truth is that the number of next actions you need to do that are not on your calendar just need to do as soon as you can do them. Most people have between 150 and 200 of those. So those are things to buy at the store, things to talk to your life partner about, things you need to do at your computer, websites you need to surf, etc. And so sometimes what's going to make this a little simpler is to create some subcategories of those. Like I've got mine organized by here's the calls I need to make, here's stuff I need to talk to my wife about, here's stuff I need to do at home, here are the errands I need to run, etc. So I've just created some simple subcategories of those next actions. It's just much more functional for me to work with. The non-actionable stuff, pretty simple. You just put trash where it goes, you put reference where it goes, and it's nice to have a someday maybe list. It's kind of like a project list, all those things you might want to do, but not now. You just want to keep reviewing it to see if it's ready to activate it or not. So it doesn't have to be a real complex system to be able to still keep all this stuff into an external brain. And then, of course, you have to look at this stuff regularly. If you don't step back and look at your calendar, if you don't look at your list of calls to make, if you don't look at your errands that you need to run when you go out and about, then come on, you're not being highly effective or optimal in terms of what you do. So you just need to make sure that you've got tools to give you higher perspective on a regular basis. Now, your calendar will give you that. If any of you've looked at your calendar for the last day or two, you've already done that. You said, hey, wait a minute, let me step back, take a look at where I am in space and time, see what's coming toward me. And and then you don't have to worry about or look at your calendar, until the next time you need to look at it. So the whole idea is you actually need to use your brain and do these reflective processes so that your brain gets to relax about all that stuff. When's the last time you looked at your strategic plan? How often do you need to look at that to make sure you stay current and have all the moving parts identified and appropriate accountabilities and people moving on the right stuff? How often do you need to look at the things you need to, be aware of this weekend with your family in terms of what are the issues your kids are dealing with? What are the things you need to, buy at the store? What are the things, I don't know. So all these become, reflections of what you need to do. And, I've identified at least 6 horizons. What's your life purpose and your core values? What's your long-term vision and goals? What are your shorter-term goals and objectives and plans? What are the things you need to maintain? What are all the projects you need to finish about all that? What are all the action steps you need to take about all those moving parts? So there are at least 6 horizons that we've got a lot of commitments. I mean, come on, your life, our lives are much more complex than most people, I think, give themselves credit for. But you need to have a system that can be able to look at those things in some consistent and objective way in order to feel comfortable about what you're doing. And probably more important, comfortable about what you're not doing. If you can't give me a quick 30-second view of everything you're not doing by listening to this, then some part of you is not fully present listening to this. Because you haven't seen that and said, wait a minute, let me just look at this. Everything else can wait. So being able to just have that inventory doesn't mean you're ever going to finish all of that. It just means you need to just be aware of whatever all that content is. And then when you make choices about what to do, you're doing that from a choice place. They're called, hey, here, I'm a little bit tired. I got about 10 minutes before my next meeting. Let me look at my calls list, see if there's a simple call I can make. Call Mary and make a reservation, or whatever. I need to be able to then pick the stuff I need to do. So again, life is coming to us like this. It doesn't come to us organized, prioritized, set up in any kind of a convenient way. We need to do that. And that's something you're not born doing. But if you get these 5 stages built in as habits, you know how to capture stuff that's potentially meaningful, wherever you are. Decide next actions and outcomes and what it means to you if you're going to do anything about it at all. Have some sort of a trusted organization system where you can park reminders of these things in appropriate places. And then make sure that you're stepping back and looking at the contents of your external brain in some consistent basis. That's where you're making trusted choices on stage 5 about what to do. Now, the whole idea is, put stuff in front of your door, just the door of your mind, not the door of your house. But the idea is building that inventory so that's available to you on a consistent basis in whatever way, shape, or form. And most of you have some versions of this already. If you already have a strategic plan or a project plan or something, pull it out, look at it. That's what this is. It's like put stuff in front of your face that you need to see. If you already have an agenda list or page for your board meeting, that's what this is. It's like get all these things out in front of you so that when you're ready to go engage with your world, you're doing it from a trusted place. So again, you can get to mind like water, but again, it's not free. And sometimes the water feels like this. And which is cool as long as you got a good board to surf on, that's fine. But invariably, no matter how good this guy is, what's going to happen to him? Yeah, he's going to fall off. We are too. I am too. However, you'll see what this guy has is he's got a little thing called an ankle tether tied to his board, to his ankle. Why? If he falls off, he can get back on real quick. And what I just shared with you is a methodology that is not only the board to surf on, but it's also a board you can get back on real quick if you know how to do that. You suddenly feel out of control, unfocused. Wow, what's going on? Sit down and capture, clarify, organize, and reflect. And it will get you back on your board to then be back on your game again. And, this doesn't make life easy. Come on, if life were easy, you wouldn't be challenged, you wouldn't grow, you wouldn't expand or express. So it's not about making life easy. It's about just being in the driver's seat, about how you're dealing with that experience and how you're engaged with it. That said, the bottom line here is this methodology is something that's going to give you a thought process and a set of best practices, no matter what happens. You wouldn't believe the legion of testimonials we've gotten over these last 30 years of people who said, oh my God, thank God I had this methodology under my belt when I got fired, or when I got hired, or when I got promoted, or when I got married, or when I got divorced, or when I suddenly realized I had a life-threatening illness, or when suddenly I inherited elder care for my parents, or when suddenly my team just got blown up in 9/11. Come on, I could share them with you. And that's when this stuff really comes. This comes to the fore. So are you ready for surprise? Are you ready for new stuff coming at you so you can then quickly capture and recalibrate and refocus yourself, toward whatever the new game is. So, there's kind of the last 35 years of my life shared with you in just a few minutes here. Very happy to engage with questions and so forth. So, David, do you want to open it up to folks that may have any questions about this?
Yeah, that'd be great. David, thanks for an awesome presentation. And just like you said, we'll go ahead and answer any questions that people might have. If you want to ask David a question, please submit the question in the chat icon on your screen, and we'll get those answered right away. David, let me start by asking you, how long did it take you full transparency here, how long did it take you to come up with this model? And how difficult was it for you personally to stick with it and not fall off the wagon, so to speak?
Well, you know, David, I kind of came at this through the back door, which is quite different than most people who just suddenly get introduced to this. This was not one big epiphany. This was a long string of epiphanettes. Little piece here, little piece there, little piece there. You know, I'd become enamored by clear space in my head with both my spiritual and meditative practices as well as the martial arts. You know, that it was important to clear your head before you fought 4 people at once. You know, so there were very real practical things to say, keep your head clear. That's the most optimal state to operate from. Then when I started to get involved in the professional world, I saw how easy it was to screw up clear space. So I got very hungry to find, wait a minute, what are techniques that can help me stay clearer in my head about my priorities, about whatever, and to get rid of the nagging, gnawing sense of things out there that I couldn't make any progress about just by thinking of them. And so I uncovered technique by technique. I had a couple of mentors that shared with me a couple of very profound pieces of this methodology that I took from them, and then started to cobble all this stuff together. So it took about 4 or 5, 6 years maybe for me to really realize what I'd come up with and to start to build it into a consistent methodology. But it wasn't like I was in serious pain. I thought I kind of had my act together, but then I, you know, started to test out some of these techniques and went, wow, that is really cool. How much clearer space that was for me. And so then I began to share that with my own clients in my own small consulting practice that I started back in 1981. And it worked the same thing for them. Wow, that really helps. And it helped them be much clearer about what they were doing. So it was really kind of piece by piece over a few, maybe half a dozen years, where the core elements of this model sort of refined themselves. And then thousands of hours, 25 years later, you know, I'm sitting one-on-one with some of the best and brightest, smartest people on the planet and busiest people on the planet, testing this methodology and implementing it with them, that I realized that what I had uncovered was unique and nobody else had done it. And so that was when I decided to write the book.
Great. David, we have a few more questions coming in right now. And I want to remind the audience that we would really like to know if you found the information in today's webinar to be helpful. So please, if you have a few seconds, take a brief moment to answer the poll and let us know. And then we'll start again with the questions here. But one question, David, as we launch this poll that's coming in through here, I believe it's from Andy. The mind like water analogy. Can you go over that again and the explanation of the mind like water and the meaning behind it?
Yeah, I think it was popularized mostly by Bruce Lee's sensei that trained him, that said, look, you need to be as fluid and as soft as water is and as flexible as that is. That's where your power comes from. And so, you know, that became kind of a bit of a martial arts kind of just a signpost, if you will. So the mind like water idea was like, okay, look, you don't want to over or underreact. You throw something into the water, it doesn't. You throw in a pebble, it does pebbleness. You throw in a boulder, it does boulderness. And it's not, it doesn't go, oh my God, here comes a boulder, and gets upset. It goes, okay, boulder, and then it just responds. So the whole idea is sort of a non-reactive or non-overreactive or underreactive response to your world and your life. And that sense of calm and balance, and then always back to calm again, is water is a great analogy or metaphor about that. So that's where that comes from and why I use it.
A good question from Ann right now. How often do you recommend doing a mind sweep?
You should never not do a mind sweep. You should be capturing everything as it occurs to you wherever you are. Now, if you're just beginning with this, it's a good idea at least once a week to maybe sit down and say, okay, what's occurred this week that I haven't gotten out of my mind yet? So not a bad idea. You know, one of the things we discovered is the weekly review is probably the major success key to implementing and maintaining a systematic approach like this. Once a week, you need to kind of clean up, because the world comes at all of us a lot faster than we can keep it pristinely captured and organized and so forth. But at least once a week, you need to build in this sort of oasis where you sit down and go, well, wait a minute. Okay, let me get this stuff out of my head again. Once you get used to this, you should have a ubiquitous capture tool, a 3x5 card or a notepad like me that I just carry in my wallet with my credit cards. And so, the older you get, it's not senility, it is sophistication. That the older you get, the more good ideas will not happen where that idea will be implemented. You'll be buying bread at the store thinking it's something you need to bring up in your marketing meeting. You'll be in your marketing meeting remembering you need bread. So if you want to be optimal in terms of your mental real estate, you want to have those ideas once. But in order to have those ideas once, you better have a capture tool with you when you have that idea while you're buying bread at the store, and have that idea while you're in the marketing meeting. So, you should get used to and build the habit that you don't keep anything in your head, ever. I don't.
David, how do you recommend tracking? This is another question that came in. How do you recommend tracking next actions associated with projects? Do they live in the same bucket, or do you have a project-only bucket?
It's a good question. Until or unless you have technology that lets you see it both ways, so that you could, in an Excel spreadsheet, for instance, you could do this. And there's a few software apps out there. You can create the project and create an action tied to the project so that you can then see the actions tied to the project, but you could also see that action tied to the context for that action. So that if it's a phone call, you could click on calls, and you'd see all the calls that are part of all of your projects. Because you're out there with the phone, that's all you can do. So you don't have to go hunt through all your project notes to see all the phone calls you need to make. You just want to see all the calls you need to make, no matter what they're about. Same is true when you talk to your boss. You don't want to have to look through every single project note to notice the next steps you need to talk, if talk to your boss is the next step about that, or your assistant. So it's what we found over the years is, if you had to choose, you want to choose, let me see the action based upon the context for it. When I'm sitting with my assistant, I want to see all the things I need to talk to him or her about, no matter what they're about, instead of having to look through 14 different places or 75 different places of all my projects to find all the things I need to talk to him or her about. That wouldn't make sense. So if you had to choose, you want to organize your actions by where they happen or the tools required, because that's where those things actually, take place. And that's where you want to see the reminders of them. You just want to make sure that they're clear enough about what they're about. The key to all this, David, is the once a week to sit back and take a look at all of your stuff to make sure you have next actions on all of your projects, because you can't do a project. You can only do actions about it. So the only thing you can do are the things that are on your action list and on your calendar. And so those just need to make sure they're populated by the right stuff. And then when you review them and see all the options that you have or choices to make, if you got a free 30 minutes, but your brain is kind of toast, you want to be able to look at, could I make some calls right now? Should I surf the web right now? What should I do? And you want to be able to then see those maps, if you will, of options that you've already decided about stuff to do. Because you don't have the energy at that point to make those decisions. You need to have already made those decisions. And so you just need to pick and choose about where to point yourself and then what to do. So for the most part, it's more efficient and effective to organize your actions grouped together by the kind of action they are, where they take place, and what tool is required. Calls to make, stuff to do the computer, errands to run, stuff to talk to your partner about, etc. That's the easiest way to manage those. Now, if you have a piece of software or can geek yourself enough to say, okay, let me see it both ways, there are some apps out there that can do that. But again, that still takes some thinking to implement, and some thinking when you insert stuff in there. That's one of the problems there is if you make it too hard to enter stuff into your system because of all these different categories and context, you won't do it. Because life's just we're too busy, to spend a lot of time. Yeah, when your inner geek shows up on a rainy Saturday, you can do all that, but not when the fire hose of Monday hits you.
I'm chuckling to myself here with this one last question that we got, David, because I think this describes the situation that I'm in, and I'm sure a lot of other people. If you have a half dozen productivity apps and software that you use to try to get organized, is there one that you would recommend? Is there one that would really work with the GTD model?
No.
That's what I thought.
Okay. You just need a list manager and one that you like using. Anything that manages lists. And you need to make sure you can make multiple lists and make them easy to see. but any of those work, and they're showing up almost daily. They're over, last count, over 300 apps that were built based upon my model. And they're all just list managers with different bells and whistles. It depends on how, the more complex they are, the more powerful they are, the harder they are to figure out, and figure out your heuristic and your algorithms about how you're going to structure them so that it works for you. But any of them work. And hey, frankly, a lot of high-tech people I know are going back to paper-based systems, because paper-based, a paper-based planner is the best list manager there is in terms of being able to see things in a larger context and see them in relationship to each other. Your computer is still a black hole. So you have to be very disciplined to make a computer program work.
Great. David, thank you so much. I am not seeing any other questions, but if you do have any questions that pop up in your head after this webinar, please feel free to contact me. I can get those questions over to David Allen. And I want to, again, thank everyone for participating in today's webinar. Special thanks to David Allen for taking the time to speak with us. This webinar will be posted on BBB's YouTube page as well as BBB's webinar homepage next week. So if you like to watch or share this information with others, please do so. I hope all of you have a wonderful day. And again, please do not hesitate to contact me directly, or if you have any questions, call us at 206-431-2227. And if you haven't already, check out David's book, Getting Things Done. I've had to read it a couple of times, including the audio version. And personally speaking, it's been extremely helpful in helping put some sort of organization in my crazy work life. So David, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
David, my pleasure. Thanks very much.